All right, so my name is Rebecca Jeppesen. I'm an independent consultant with Nunavut Wildlife Consulting, based in Canada. And I've been working with SMART on a community-based monitoring program in the Arctic. So today I'm just going to give you a little bit of an overview of that program, how it's used, and some data engagement we've done recently. So for those of you who have never heard of Nunavut, which I'm guessing is quite a few, it's a massive territory in the Canadian Arctic, and by massive I mean 1.9 million square kilometers. In that territory there are 38,000 residents, about 85% of whom are Inuit, which is the local Indigenous people. And they're spread between 26 remote communities. And they're remote and there's no road access, so everything is fly-in only, except during a short ice-free season when resupply ships can come in, mostly July and August. There are still some food security issues. If there's bad weather, there's no plane, there's no food in the communities. So there's obviously still quite a reliance on harvesting for sustenance. People still go hunting quite a bit, bring the food back for their families, and the hunters there are basically the main conservationists in the area. And a lot of the harvesting is done based on a deep-seated traditional ecological knowledge. So it's knowledge that's been passed down for many generations amongst the Inuit people. Wildlife management in northern Canada is formed mainly through land claims agreements. These are kind of like modern treaties that recognize the legal rights of Indigenous people to harvest wildlife, and they also prioritize habitat conservation and support resource user participation in wildlife management decision-making. So within this system in Nunavut is the Nunavut Wildlife Management Board. It's an institute of public government, so it was formed under the Nunavut Land Claims Agreement, which was formed in 1994. And the board is an independent tribunal. So there's a chair and 9 appointed board members. The board members are appointed from Inuit organizations, as well as from federal and territorial governments. And the board, or the NWMB, is the main instrument of wildlife management in the territory. So they make the decisions and recommendations on quota limitations, non-quota limitations, so things like seasonal harvest or sex-selective harvesting. They facilitate research in the territory. And they also propose management plans. So if there's management plans that come for approval for species or proposed species at risk listings, they go through those approval processes. And their decisions are informed by the best available information from all knowledge sources. So that includes science and from traditional knowledge. So in 2012, the NWMB launched the Community-Based Monitoring Network. And it was a program that is designed to recognize harvesters as subject matter experts. So the Inuit hunters or harvesters are going about their normal hunting activities or normal harvesting activities, and they're collecting data using mobile technology along the route, and they record what they see on the land, what they catch, environmental observations, wildlife observations. The main objectives of the program are to improve information available for decision making. So the harvesters are the people who spend the most time on the land, and they see the most, and they can bring that information back to the table. So to acquire both data and Inuit traditional knowledge within an up-to-date progressive management system, while maximizing benefits for participating communities. So unlike some of the other programs that we've heard about, where they've got full-time employees that are also collecting data, these are people who are just out hunting on their own time, and they're volunteering to do this data collection. And the final objective is to document Inuit traditional knowledge in a format that can communicate with science. So on that, community-based monitoring is a promising strategy to help bridge the gaps between science and traditional knowledge systems. So briefly, science tends to be a very directed study over relatively small study areas, fairly short term, maybe 2 years, 5 years, a decade, and it's very quantitative in nature. In contrast, Inuit knowledge tends to be sort of a traditional monitoring system where knowledge and observations are shared orally between individuals, and that information is shared across generations. It covers very large areas and long term, so often many generations, in some cases centuries. So the community-based monitoring promises to help expand the scope of documented knowledge, to help quantify some of that longer term data, and hopefully to result in a deeper understanding of some of the pressures that are faced by wildlife ecosystems. And to do this in a context that can help promote Indigenous sovereignty. So within this program, the harvesters that are collecting the data actually retain ownership of the data and have say in how the data is used and in which applications. So this is not the SMART approach as in the full management cycle. It's kind of a misnomer on the slide. It's our approach to using SMART. So the community-based monitoring network started in 2012, as I mentioned, and it went along quite well until we started seeing that there was lots of data there, wanted to start looking into making use of it. At that point, we realized that the for-profit developer that had been monitoring the data for us at that point and managing the data didn't have a system for us to actually access the data in any usable format. So we could access raw data, but we couldn't run queries ourselves, we couldn't make any types of reports, didn't do any analysis. So it was not very flexible, and it was also at a huge cost. So there was a need identified in about 2018 to look at alternative options. We needed mobile data collection, so harvesters needed to be able to do this on their own personal cell phones. We needed decentralized data management. So because everything is so spread out over such a large area, we needed the option to sort of export the data on the fly when people got back to their communities, rather than having a central location. Wanted standardized reporting. And also we had this whole decade of data that had been collected already, and we wanted to be able to make sure that was included in the database moving forward as well. So the solution, not surprisingly, since we're here, was to go to SMART. And the SMART partnership at North Carolina Zoo worked very closely with us for a number of years to build tailored database. The forms that they Drew developed through the data model, were very closely mirrored to the existing data collection forms. So training of all these harvesters was really facilitated. They also increased accessibility for us. So the entire mobile app is now available in Inuktitut, and there's customized icons that are culturally appropriate and reflect the species in the Arctic. We've also just recently completed some pretty heavy lifts on reporting, and again by heavy, I mean by we, that would be Drew doing the bulk of that. And so we have reports now that we can give to harvesters of their own data, to community liaisons, which are kind of the leads within each community, about what's happening within each community. And most recently completed is a quarterly report for board members that gives a very detailed summary of all of the activities in the program. So SMART was launched for this program in October of 2021, and it is now fairly self-sustaining. Costs have been minimized, and the technical input after the initial learning curve has come down to be fairly minimal. So just to give you an idea of the scale of the database, it's been run, this program, Community-Based Monitoring Network, in 10 of the 26 communities in Nunavut, currently operating in 7. It's been going for 12 years. At present, we have 230 active harvesters that are active in the program. We've got data from 23,400 patrols as of last week, totaling 3.8 million kilometers traveled. And in the database, there are 5,000 observation records, so that's wildlife and environmental, along with 11,800 harvest records. So over the years, there had been people from science, from statistical backgrounds that have reviewed the data, looked at it, talked about different types of applications. But there had never been a true peer review process. And by that I mean we'd never really wrapped the data back up and given it to the people who collected it. There had been in-community validation. We'd sat down with a harvester and said, here's your maps, do things look right? But never really given it back to a group of elders, of women, of Inuit active harvesters and said, does this look right to you? What's missing? So last year we did that through a data engagement and knowledge sharing workshop. And it was attended by 22 harvesters, elders, and women from 9 communities across Nunavut. And the objectives were to discuss the value of the data to communities. So is this useful to the communities themselves and their own local wildlife initiatives? And also we wanted to gain an understanding of the context within which this data should be analyzed, how it should be interpreted, and how it should be applied. So our kind of next steps in trying to implement the SMART approach and complete the cycle, so going from just having the data and having the reports to actually trying to use it, was through this workshop. Prior to the workshop, we ran a series of queries, leaned pretty heavily on some of the reports with the context and the content that came out of those to create data products for presentation to participants at the workshop. Most of the data was organized by community and or by taxonomic groups. We had things by marine mammals, ungulate species, other terrestrial mammals, fur bearers, things like that. The workshop was mostly just open discussion. It was facilitated, and there were breakout groups that had certain subjects that were put forward for discussion. And one of the things that was really great at the workshop that we didn't necessarily foresee was that as discussion went in one direction or another, or people had questions, we could literally just flip open the laptop, run a couple of extra queries, and produce new data products like on the spot for people to encourage that discussion or to help answer some of the questions. So in the next few slides, I'll give you an overview of some of the outcomes of the workshop, some of the discussion that was had, very high level. So the first thing we did was explore what we called the global CBMN data. So we basically put all of the data from across the territory into data products, so maps of all of the harvest locations, sometimes organized by species, sometimes just all together. This is an example of one of the maps of travel routes. So here it's color-coded just by community, but we had it organized as well by modes of transport, so whether people were traveling by snowmobile, by all-terrain vehicle, rarely by foot. The distances are just huge there. And we kind of threw this out there for discussion. The results were really not surprising. Communities that had fewer participating harvesters, so there's fewer people collecting less data overall, there were likely to be certain areas of harvesting that were missed on the maps or that were not well represented in the data. And for some communities that had a lot of people participating that were very active, the data generally were very representative. So for marine mammals, there's been localized changes in distribution and abundance in ring seals populations, in bearded seal populations, and in walruses, and those were evident in the data, which was good. Also for narwhal, beluga, those species tend to migrate north during their spring migration. As the ice melts, the animals move up, they have their breeding in the north, and then they move back down in the fall migration. And the result is that they're seen off of the coast of some communities further south, more often in the spring or in the fall, and more in the summer in the north. So the data were representative of the movement patterns of these animals. Polar bear is probably the poster child for the Arctic. I won't go on the tangent, but polar bear populations in northern Canada are actually doing quite well. They're fine. If you want to hear that rant, let me know at lunch or over break. But overall, the participants at the workshop felt that the observations in the database represented only a fraction of the bears that are actually observed. So they're seeing a lot more bears, and they're not necessarily always recording it. And that's partly as a result of, they're out, they're hunting, they're looking for food for their family. They drive past something they're not going to hunt. They're not going to necessarily stop and take all of the data on the way. So in general, the polar bear populations had been increasing over recent years. There were a lot of reports of females with 2 cubs, quite a few of females with 3 cubs, and 2 people at the workshop had firsthand knowledge of seeing polar bear female with 4 cubs. So that's all indicative of very fast growing populations. In the last year or two, because of some of the changes in the seal populations, there's been a bit more competition for food. And because the population of bears has been growing, in some cases they're nearing carrying capacity, so some of them are getting hungrier, which means they're moving around more, and it's increasing the chances for human-wildlife conflict. So they're coming into the communities more often. And all of the participants at the workshop agreed that through the community-based monitoring network, efforts should be made to ensure that all of the bear sightings are captured within the data so that it's got a more true picture of what people are seeing and experiencing. For terrestrial mammals, the first group that I'll talk about briefly is caribou. So in some areas, there would be hundreds of thousands of caribou that have been seen over the last few years where, historically there hadn't been that many. In other areas, there had been lots of caribou, and now they're seeing fewer. And the traditional knowledge on this suggests that caribou cycle over the lifetime of an elder, so 60 to 80 years. And the reasoning for that is that they follow the food. So the primary food source for caribou is lichen, and if you get tens of thousands of caribou move through an area, there's not going to be much left to eat on the rocks. Short growing seasons, cold weather, means it takes 60 to 80 years for that to come back. So the caribou are just following their food. As a result of the caribou moving over such long time frames and the scientific surveys being done in relatively small areas and in consistent areas over time, there's a consensus among Inuit that the science surveys and the population estimates that come from those are not necessarily representative of what's happening on the land. So the hope is that some of the CBMN data can help direct some of those surveys to where they should be happening, what time of year they should be happening, and help get better informed decisions. Muskoxen tends to be fairly similar, so they follow the vegetation. They don't undertake long-distance migrations like the mainland barren ground caribou do, but again, they follow the vegetation. Sometimes they're more obvious, or there's more numbers in some areas. Other times they've moved on. For fur bearers, the fur market has declined in recent years, so there's less fur harvesting now than there had been, say, 10 or 15 years ago. The exception to this is wolves and wolverines, which are harvested still fairly often. Wolves because they are quite a threat to caribou, and caribou are the livelihood for most Inuit and their family. And so wolves and wolverines are harvested either opportunistically, so if they're out on the land, they're looking for food, and they see a wolf or they see a wolverine, there's still pretty good price in the fur, they'll use the fur products, so they will harvest then, and sometimes through directed hunts. And foxes are often harvested as well, but closer to communities and often by youth. So young harvesters that are trying to learn how to trap, how to train, how to track the animals will obviously target foxes close to town. And grizzly bears are a relatively new species in northern Canada. So they'd obviously been in southern Canada for quite a long time. There's loss of habitat there, there's more development, there's more humans, and they're starting to move north above the tree line. And as such, there's less traditional knowledge on those, and they're perceived as being very unpredictable, and therefore as a threat to humans. Fish. The most common fish in the Arctic in Canada is Arctic char. It's obviously also commonly harvested. It's the most commonly harvested. It's in the database. Probably 95% of the fish records are for Arctic char. Elders spoke of the importance in the past of drying char after a really good harvest in the summer so that it was available for consumption during the winter months, and that is still practiced today. And interestingly, something we really didn't foresee that isn't in the database is that everybody from all 9 communities shared stories about these giant fish that are in their lakes that are completely unknown species. And they're legends from centuries ago, but people still report seeing them from time to time. And they were all surprised that other communities and other regions had similar legends. And the last group was birds. Ptarmigan are little ground birds, and they fluctuate year to year. Arctic terns nest on offshore islands, coastal islands, and when there's a lot of human disturbance, a lot of shipping, if there's development in an area, the entire colony will move to another area. So it's important for the community-based monitoring network to document the current locations of these colonies and be able to monitor the response to shipping and human activity. One thing that was very obvious with the elders during the workshop is that they all spoke about the increased diversity of bird species they're seeing in recent years as a result of the changing climate. So it's getting warmer, the birds are just moving further north. And the last thing we did was kind of group people off into elders, women, and active harvesters, and just let them talk about anything that had come to mind that they hadn't had a chance to say in previous sessions. And we had 4 major themes that emerged from those discussions. One was about the traditional roles of women and of children and of men, and how those have changed over time. And within that context, there was a lot of discussion about the traditional laws of conservation, the morals and ethics and values, and how to respect the animals. Shipping was also a major concern. It's felt that it affects the distribution of marine mammals, so seals, whales, all affected by that. And ice breaking happens now quite a bit. Again, trying to get resupply in a little bit late in the season, a little bit early in the season, can result in some ice breaking activity. That reduces the quality of ice habitat for species like seals, which therefore might move, which causes polar bears to have to move. And in other areas, it affects the caribou migrations because there's places where caribou will always go to cross ice. And if that's not there because of the ice breaking, it presents a problem for them as well. Climate change, again, came up, and the main concern there immediately for the Inuit harvesters was that the traditional travel routes, so the places where they knew the ice was safe, where there were not always currents and where it was going to be thick first time in the year so they could access important harvesting areas, was changing. It was becoming less predictable. The snow conditions as well. Some years there was way more snow than they had seen, other years there was hardly any. And the last theme was the importance of continuing community-based monitoring efforts. So people felt it was very important that their own knowledge was being documented so it could be shared with future generations, and also so that it could be included in wildlife management decisions. Obviously, if there's decisions made on wildlife managing that affects harvesting, it's going to affect them being able to feed their families. So it's really important to be able to know that their knowledge was being considered when those decisions were being made. And the last thing that came out of the workshop, again, that we didn't necessarily foresee going in, was that there was agreement that the discussions that came out of this workshop should accompany the CBMN data. So if we run queries in SMART and it's going to get used for wildlife management, either by the NWMB or by their co-management partners, that some of the context from these discussions should accompany it, and it's kind of a metadata to go along with it, so that it can be interpreted and applied within the broader context. So that's it. I don't know if we have time for questions, but thank you. Did I talk too long?
No, great. We started late, so we're fine. So just moving right along, I'm going to ask Diana Paredes, please, from WCS Ecuador to come up, and she'll be our next presenter.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Diana Paredes. I work for WCS in Ecuador, and today I want to present our experience working with SMART Collect in 8 communities in the Amazon jungle of Ecuador. After 10 years of working in SMART in protected areas, we move forward a little bit to start working with SMART with communities. But for communities, it's a very unique space where communities do not do patrol like rangers inside protected areas. So for them, the desktop application and the mobile application was not suitable for them. So when the Alliance just pulled the SMART Collect, we said this is the app that we need for SMART to be implemented inside the communities. So here is the map of Ecuador. Ecuador is located in South America, and here we can see the 8 communities that we are working with. 6 of them are located in the north part of the Amazon of Ecuador that are also part of the Yasuni Biosphere Reserve and are part of the limit of the Yasuni National Park. With these 6 communities, we have already more than 10 years of working. We work with governance, with animal monitoring for special species that are located in these communities. So we have a long track with them, and we have already worked with them in several topics. So the 6 communities are Martinica, that is the one in the most far away. Then you have the others that are next to each other, and Indijama, Nueva Providencia, Pompeya, San Roque, and San Isla, that are Quichuas communities. And then in the south, we have 2 Shuar communities, Kumay and Caputna, that we also have long relations, a little bit shorter than the ones in the north. We have more than 5 years, and we are also working with them in governance and to generate management plans of their territories. So how do we start? We start with their management plans. All the communities must have a management plan for the 5 or 10 years in a lab time. So inside each, management plan, they have a lot of things that they have to do to manage their territories, and one of them is control and surveillance. The other one is monitoring by service, a specific service. So the first approach that we made is through control and surveillance. So we gather all the information from the management plans. They already were gathering information in paper and GPS. So we create a very easy and simple data model. This data model is specific for each community, but also can be related with the other ones, and also the data model can be responding questions from the national government of protected areas. So the data models can be merged between them. Then, as you already know, we launch Connect, and then we just download the package to Smart Collect. Remember that Smart Collect doesn't do tracks, just waypoints, just incidents. So for us, it was a good thing. Then what we did is to generate a manual, and a specific manual for control and surveillance. So this is a very pocket and handy manual where they can find everything that they need to gather information with Smart Collect. And we deploy field workshops. We have been doing field workshops, at least one for each community. So all the communities have the opportunity to receive the workshops, to know how to use the telephone, how to use the Smart Collect app, and they are ready to start collecting the data. Something important to say is that the data that they are collecting is their data, is not our data. We are helping to train the people and to become empowered of their data. Okay. After the training, we start with the follow-up a couple months later, and what we did is to have meetings with the people that we have been training to ask them how they are doing, how the reports are they receiving, if they are using or not. And also we are sending them some specific reports with a map and with some tables and some pictures showing them the information that they are gathering each month. And with this information, they are already taking actions inside their community. An important thing to say is that this implementation is less than a year, so the data that we have is not already full, so we can make analysis and to implement important management changes inside the communities. But with the basics data that they have, they are already taking actions inside their territory. So part of our first results that we have are some maps. So in the green, in green color, you can see the protection of this Kaputna. Kaputna was a shuar in the south. So the green is part of the protection. So the communities agreed that all the green is going to be protection. And then the beige color is where they can use sustainable with their hunting, they can do agriculture, tourism, and everything. As you can see, a lot of the points are inside the green part that they agreed to be protection. So that's one of the first impressions that they get, that a lot of people that live inside Kaputna is doing things inside the protection zone that they designed, that was designed by them. Then we have the results for Kumai. Kumai are working better with the protection zones, but they have some problems in taking the data. Some points are outside their territory, and this we know that are errors, but in the use of the land, it's more clear that they are doing fine. As I mentioned before, this is our 10 months timeline for the implementation. We have really basic basic observations inside the communities. And as you can see, we just have like global numbers of incidents for hunting, cutted trees, fishing, and illegal mining. And we are not able to say that these are like illegal things happened. Just we said that are things that are happening inside the communities, and the communities need to know that is happening, and they have to take actions in them. We have been having some challenges, especially with the illegal mining. When people that we train start to report this illegal mining, they feel a little bit scared because people from other communities or the same communities were attacking them. So they decide just to stop doing the work, stop taking the data, and said because they feel in risk. Because of this, we decide to move a little bit forward of control and surveillance for a couple of months of years. So we are going to include a new data model to share with them the monitoring of animals and trucks, so it's a more light work, and they don't feel that they risk their lives to gather the information. And as mentioned before, we already have some community management actions. One of them is that communities are gathering in workshops together to analyze the information that they are gathering and taking action, so the neighbor of the community is not allowed to hunt in my community, and they just knew that this was happening because of the information. Another bad thing that I already told is that they have been being attacked because of the observation and the incidents that they are pointing, but I think this is part of the job, part of the journey, and we have to develop some strategies to go through this. Another good example of community management is that the presidents of the communities are analyzing the data, and they are doing assemblies with all the communities, so in their local community, they can establish punishments for people that are hunting or are cutting trees in cities that they shouldn't be. Our next steps are very long. The first thing that we want to do is to improve the communications, because some of the communities are very far away. So they have very limited access to internet, and the energy is very unstable. So we have to think about how to sustain this gathering of information. And also, as I mentioned, we want to adapt the data model for monitoring, so we move a little bit farther for the control and surveillance that nowadays is a little bit risky in Ecuador, especially in the communities. The other thing is that they are sending the information through a Smart Connect, and who is receiving the information is the technical team of WCS. What we want this year is to build capacity, so in each community we have a person that works with a Smart Desktop and is able to work with a Smart Connect, and also is able to work with the reports and to deliver the information. And also one thing that we will be working this couple of years, how to adapt the management, the internal management of the communities to implement actions to improve the management of the communities. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. It's exciting to hear about Smart Collect use in the wild. It's something that we were excited about for a long time, so that's great. Next up is Samuel Merson from Woodland Park Zoo to talk about work in Papua New Guinea.
Slides to come up. I'm pressing next. Is there anything else?
Okay, technical difficulty. We'll get that sorted and we'll move to Leng from WCS Cambodia, who will give our next presentation. We'll come back to Sam.
So thank you so much, Drew, and good morning, everyone. So today, my name is Leigh, and I'm the Conservation Technology Manager, and I work to support the protected area that's supported by the WCS at Cambodia program. So today I'm going to share about the experience related to the implementing of SMART in the Phlong Indigenous community in one of the protected area in Cambodia that known as the Kausema Wildlife Sanctuary. So Kausema Wildlife Sanctuary, it is one of the protected area in Cambodia located at the eastern plain of Cambodia that it's cover more than 300,000 hectares, and it is the protected area that known as the that can recognize as the protected area that has very important biodiversity conservation in the protected area in the place in Cambodia. And currently the Kausema Wildlife Sanctuary it also home of the primate species and also some of the elephant and wild cattle and a number of the bird species as well. And of course, based on the our record, there are more than over 1,000 species that have been recorded in the wildlife sanctuary, and also 20 species that new to CBMN. And among all of those, it is 85 of the fauna and flora that are under the threatened. And Kausema Wildlife Sanctuary is also the home of the more than 20,000 people that are living in the sanctuary, and 90%, about 90% of those people are recognized as the Phlong Indigenous community. And Phlong Indigenous community is a group of indigenous ethnic people that are primarily resident at the eastern part of Cambodia, that we know that particularly in Mondulkiri province, that the place that the protected area located are. And Phlong community also living in some part in Vietnam country as well that close to the Mondulkiri province. And Phlong community are also considered of one of the indigenous of the hill tribe in Cambodia. Of course, the Phlong people, they have their own unique culture and also language and traditional that distinguish them from the majority of Cambodian people. At the meantime, besides the reach of the biodiversity and the beautiful traditional of the indigenous people, Kayosima also facing to many of the challenges, such as the land encroachment, such as the illegal logging, poaching, and the other illegal activity that harm to the natural resource. And to address all of those, challenges, it requires also a multifaceted involves between the government agency, non-organization, and also local authority and stakeholder in that area as well. To strengthening the law enforcement and promoting the sustainable land management, enhancing the community engagement and livelihood opportunity, as well as to raising awareness related to the biodiversity conservation in the area also are the important and essential component of the effort that can safeguard to the Kayosima Wildlife Sanctuary. Among all of those, SMART is also one of the approach that we are using in Kayosima that we can use it to support the decision making for the management in Kayosima Wildlife Sanctuary. So, history of SMART. SMART has been introduced in Kayosima Wildlife Sanctuary since 2014. So now it's about 10 years already, but it's just managed by the Provincial Department of Environment and Support Technical from the WCS. However, for the community engagement, we only use SMART and integrate the SMART system to the local community just for the last 2 and 3 years. And the purpose that we are using SMART is to enhance the wildlife protection and the conservation, and also to empower the Phlong Indigenous community in the conservation effort, and also to improve the collaboration and the communication between all of the stakeholders inside the protected area. So I would like to show some steps that we are implementing and our experience in implementing SMART in the Phlong Indigenous community. So first one is related to the community engagement and training. And of course, so firstly, we established the committee of the community patrol teams and also community patrol member, that all of those committee and patrol member are recognized by the commune council. And after we form the team, we provide the training so far that we provide 13 pieces of the training with the regularly follow-up, and also provide all of those training to more than 300 people in the protected area, in the community. So the second point is to deploy the SMART mobile. So we install the SMART mobile application into the device and provide it to each community that located in our protected area. And with all of those, we try to simplify the text and also customize the icon in SMART mobile to implement to success and to effective implementing of the SMART mobile. We also have a staff to provide the regularly follow-up and on the usage of the SMART. The third point is the third step is the data collection. So data collection in Phlong Indigenous community will focus on the habitat condition like deforestation, illegal logging, poaching activity, and also like the wildlife movements that, to identify where is the reach and where is the priority for the wildlife that are present in the wildlife sanctuary. At the meantime, we also encourage to the community to feedback of any use of the SMART mobile. If they have any problem with the SMART mobile application, so we can improve and provide feedback to the technical team so we can improve each other, not only for the data management, but also from the field as well, so we can provide some improve and feedback together. The fourth step is focus on the analysis and reporting. So WCS currently supporting the technical related to smart data analysis. So we conduct the analysis to identify where the illegal activity are, and also some of the threat, as well as some of the wildlife present and some of the conservation priority. So after we conduct this analysis, we provide those information to each village and each community, and as well as the park ranger, who also support the rise to the community inside the protected area. So the last one is the action plan. So after we got all of those information after the analysis, we will use those information as basic information in order to set up the patrol target plan. So WCS currently we provide the technical support and provide them the information about where is the hotspot of the illegal activity and where is the conservation priority, that it is very important to the commune chief or to the park ranger, that they know where is the situation of the illegal activity or every observation in the conservation area. So it is a basic information that support them for the patrol target plan. So for the last 2 years in implementing SMART, from 2022 to 2023, the community patrol team inside the Kausima Wildlife Sanctuary, they are complete almost 1,500 patrol. And with those patrol, they also stop and support the law enforcement team to related to encroachment. So more, it is about over 100 observation and 100 case that they stop the illegal encroachment. And more than 2,000 snare have been collected by the community patrol team, as well as about almost 700 other equipment that has been confiscated, including chainsaw, including some of transportation, and some of the equipment that they use to commit the illegal crime in the protected area. And with that, they also, this means that they also support the law enforcement team to build the court case. As the result, it's about 50, it's almost 50 court cases that have been built and sent to the court, but it doesn't mean that a community, they have the mandate to build that, but they just have the law enforcement to stop those activity and find all of those illegal activity and support them to fill in the court case and the problem that they are encounter. Besides the illegal activity, they are also collecting the information about the data related to the species, bird species, and some of the mammal species that are present in the wildlife sanctuary as well. I would like to share about the lesson learned that we have implementing SMART so far. So the first one is related to the improvement of wildlife and habitat protection. It doesn't mean that they are 100% stop the illegal activity related to the wildlife poaching and habitat protection. However, they can enhance the monitoring and also rapid response on the threat. So in this case, by using SMART, it can be identified where the threats are and where is the hotspot, the most hotspot. So it is easy, it is the information that can help the management in the protected area to take action at the target area and on, I can say, to take action on time and on target. And the second one is the community empowerment. So this is related to involving the Bunong Indigenous community into every activity of the conservation effort, that in order to empower them and strengthen their traditional in the conservation knowledge. The third one is the data-driven decision making. So for this, we follow the SMART adaptive management. So data collected through SMART, it provides a value insight for making the informed conservation decisions. And another lesson learned is make the collaboration. So before SMART, it means that they are grouping the team, like the authority, like the park ranger, and also the community. They are working as a group, but it's separately. But with SMART, we try to bring all of those and come together and bring all of the problem to through SMART data collection and provide all of those information and identify where the threat, and we solve all of those problems together. So the collaboration, currently we have the regularly quarterly meeting that bring all of the problem happening in our protected area and solve the problem together among the local authority, the NGO who work involved in the protected area, and also the community in that area as well. Oops. So, despite to the success, there are also some challenge to overcome as well. So the first one is related to the technical problem. So in this problem, as you know, from day to day, the technology always update. So if they update like this with the community who are living at the remote area, it's very difficult for them and to access with the technology, and also related to some of the digital literacy within the indigenous community that can be hidden the adoption of the effective of the use of SMART tool. The second one is related to the environmental and legislations knowledge. So it's also important that the community know about something related to the environment, and also related to some of the law, protected area law. Because in order to collect the real things, they need to have at least the basic of knowledge regarding to the wildlife, regarding to the biodiversity. And with all of those, they also need to know at least the basic about some of the law that they can protect themselves. Or at least they understand about the internal rule, the role and responsibilities that they can work and operate in their area. The third one is the limited of the resource and the expertise. So in this point, I mean related to the power resource access. As Kaisima is one of the areas that far away from the towns, so mostly we have a problem with the power resources, because we are using the digital device that we need the power to charge as well. And besides that, we also need to maintain some of the technical problem, because all of them are living far away from the town. So we try to have the focal points and the technical team that can support the community at the ground. So at least we have focal point who based at the site to resolve any problem and transfer any of the technical problem to the community and community patrol team. And here's the future direction. So for the future direction in the use of SMART, the first one is related to the inclusive technology. So in this point, we try to make the software, especially the smart mobile, to make it simplified and more easier for the user to use at the ground, because they are limited of the education. So we try to simplify the text, try to customize the icon, and also include the Khmer language, because even they are Phlong, but they also use official language as the Khmer language. So this is the, we try to make the software design as more easier for them to use. And the second one, we will continue provide the capacity building to the community member in order to use technology such as SMART, as well as the other conservation technology as well. And the third one, it also really important because it related to the long-term sustainability. This means that we will develop the strategy that including some of the financial planning and also capacity building, measurement and planning, and also regarding to the partnership to build a collaboration with the partnership. And the last one is related to try to adopt SMART as the national level in this point. Because when we are using just with the project, with the small project, it doesn't mean that it will be success at the future. Because if we use SMART in the small group and without any group of government that to power on this system, I think it's not going to success. But if the government will adopt the SMART at the national level, so even park and even the community in the protected area also will be planned to use it. So this is the very important point at the last point, that SMART national rollout will be important for the national. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you.
If everybody's okay to bear with us, we'll finish with Sam and take us into lunch. And thank you for your patience.
Let's hope it works this time. So thanks very much, Drew, for the introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here today to speak amongst colleagues. It's been a really engaging Congress, and I've enjoyed a lot of learning from so many of you. So as Drew mentioned, I'm based out of Woodland Park Zoo in our tree kangaroo conservation program, and I work a lot on our monitoring programs, and I work very closely with a few of my colleagues that couldn't be here today, Patrick, Danny and Dillian, that are based out of our TKCP PNG office that's in Leigh, and they work really closely on this program with the rangers in use. So today I want to give you a bit of a high-level overview about our Youth Conservation Area Ranger program, how we've adopted SMART to support conservation area management and monitoring, and some of the challenges that we've faced in what is a really remote and rugged area. So the Youth Conservation Area is named after three major rivers that flow through the area, the Yopno, Urwa and Som rivers. The conservation area is located in the Huon Peninsula, which is in northeast PNG. And for those that might not be aware, you can see an insert there, and it's northeast PNG, and you can see the very tip of northern Australia, North Queensland. And the Youth Conservation Area is bordered by two quite large mountain ranges, the Finisterre Range, you can see up into the west, and the Sarawak Range. And this mountain range is home to more endemic species than any other similar sized area in mainland New Guinea. And in 2009, Use became the first conservation area in Papua New Guinea, with land that was pledged by traditional landowners for sustainable resource use and conservation. And since that time, it's expanded to cover over 160,000 hectares in this area. Communities living within this area, there's around 50 villages, over 15,000 residents, and it's an extremely diverse area with over seven local languages. And because of its remoteness and the difficulty to access it, people mostly still live a subsistence, agriculture and hunting lifestyle and rely on the environment a lot for sustaining their livelihoods, but also for traditional practices such as the ceremonies that PNG is so famous for. And in this map here, you can see to support the management of the conservation area, to maintain these different purposes, it's set up into a number of different areas, from the core conservation zone, where a lot of activities are restricted, in the plan that these will provide benefits to the surrounding zones, in the buffer zone where people can conduct hunting and use it via traditional methods, to livelihood and agroforestry zones. And also you can see right up in the corner there, there's a blue marine zone that mostly contains coastal areas and a few coral reefs. And what makes use a particularly interesting landscape, but also a particularly challenging landscape, is that it's a ridge to reef conservation area, which means it covers land right from the reef right up into the very top of these high elevation areas. And it has an extremely high elevational gradient from 0 to over 4,000 metres, which is pretty immense. And as we're aware, across these elevational gradients, we get a really diverse set of ecosystems, from these coastland areas with intertidal zones, estuaries, mangroves, coral reefs, some marine areas, to forest, lowland rainforest, going up into lower and upper montane rainforests as you go higher up in elevation. And above 3,000 metres, you get these alpine grasslands, which cover these really cool, communities of different flora and species. And as we all know, across high elevational gradients, you get immense diversity. And so you get a lot of species that are important for communities and for biodiversity conservation. A few species here, such as long-beaked echidna, the Matchie's tree kangaroo, by which our program's named, dwarf cassowary, and there's a really large, diverse group of herpetofauna. And a bit of background, so the tree kangaroo conservation program's been around for about 25 years now. But since 2009, it's really focused on working with the customary landowners to support management of the conservation area for both conservation purposes and also to ensure its sustainable use of its natural resource for the people. And this is achieved through a number of different programs, through land use planning, to other programs that seek to improve livelihoods, education, One Health, and monitoring to support management, which is what I'll go into and what I work along on today. So established in 2011, at the time to complement a systematic ecological monitoring program that was being developed, the Youth Conservation Area Rangers were born. And this ranger group is comprised of 18 different rangers that are nominated by their respective communities to conduct patrols once a week, every month. And then for the other week, they work on doing community engagement with their surrounding communities. And the way these ranger groups work is that they're split up into 4 different zones, and they work very closely with a youth conservation officer to coordinate work plans, monthly patrols, review and plan data, and problem solve any issues they encounter. And there's a few key focuses of monitoring for the ranger program. Firstly, they have a focus on monitoring species that have been identified as important by communities. This is through both direct and indirect opportunistic sightings of key mammals and birds. They also monitor more recently for signs of violations of conservation area bylaws, which is mostly confined to the core conservation zone because there's much more activities permitted elsewhere outside of that. And an even more recent thing is they've started to record their engagement with communities, which has become a big part of their work that occupies about half their time. And in 2017, Youth became the first site to adopt SMART. And since then, it's been really a bit of an iterative process for us and an evolution in how we use SMART and best fit it to the context of where we work. The program's evolved from using PDAs, Cyber Tracker, to now using smartphones, Smart Mobile, and recently we've also integrated Smart Connect. But as I'll allude to, you'll see that we still have some challenges given the area that we work. And the focus of monitoring has expanded from purely a focus on ecological monitoring to wider monitoring of conservation and violations and engagement, and something I'll get into, a new focus which is on monitoring the use of natural resource priorities by communities. So how have we used some of this data over the years in SMART? Firstly, SMART's been really, which I won't get into a lot of detail because I'm sure you're all converts, it's really improved the ranger program itself. From collecting data in the field to reviewing and being able to visualise it with the rangers to understand patrol effort. Something that I've noticed reoccurring over the course of this conference is it's also been telling us really what we haven't been doing well. It's identified when we've noticed that patrol coverage hasn't been great enough. There's been barriers that have stopped the ranger teams from doing that, things like equipment. So it's sought to improve that program in that sense. Data's also been really useful in providing information to the area's Conservation Area Management Committee, which is made up of members from all of the communities, some different local and provincial and regional levels of government, and there's one member from TKCP. So this has provided information at biannual meetings when they occur. And things like this, illegal activity intensity map, HOP map, which has been something that's been produced from the data, understanding where activity is highest in the area, which has informed some of these meetings quite closely. And finally, Patrol Day has been used a lot, which I mentioned in our community land use planning. So every 5 years, communities undertake review processes and develop land use plans by communities that govern what are the priorities, how are they used, what are the rules that govern these, and understanding trends in some of the species and where activity has been highest and where illegal activities have been occurring in the landscape has helped inform some of these community ward land use plans. And it's also identified where we're not doing things well, and this has spurred the development of this new land use monitoring guide and plan that we're rolling out this year that I'll touch on soon. So as I mentioned, use is a really rugged and remote landscape. There's no roads or vehicle access, has limited infrastructure, very limited cellular network to the point it pretty much doesn't work, and a complete lack of electricity apart from the odd solar panel and generators. And this has really impacted the ability that we do all of our work, from coordinating activity with patrol teams who work very remote and are spread out, to applying and using simple technology that requires a lot of things that we take for granted, and even to accessing many areas of the landscape. And a good example of this recently, this has happened over the last 2 months, there's one there's one commercial carrier that services the entire area. And they have one plane that goes into one community 1 week, comes out a week later, so that's how we plan our work. They've had issues with that plane, and then we haven't been able to access the area for 2 months now, apart from chartering our own plane, which is very costly. So just to give you an idea of how challenging it can be to do this work and maintain and coordinate it. So a major evolution of the program to address some of the issues I alluded to was a lack of electricity and improved capacity. And that's been through trying to work with the structure we have. So it's been decentralising some of our work to give more empowerment to conservation officers to work regionally with the ranger teams, and to provide laptops, solar panels, so that they can coordinate their quarterly patrols, what they're doing, work through work plans, and keep these devices charged and operating. Previously, we didn't have this structure, and it used to involve sending PDAs back into Leigh on flights where we could, and that obviously delayed the regular running of these patrols. So simple things, but they've really addressed some of these issues for now. SMART is in many of the areas, and there's been a bit of a come up a bit in this session. Obviously, SMART's been challenging with rangers that have limited literacy and experience with smartphones. Obviously, have a different knowledge system and way of doing things. So we've been trying to improve this through improving their capability through a few different ways by bringing smart technical expertise and training into use. We did foundational training to develop our database and our methods and materials in 2017. Tony Lynham, who I'm sure many of you know, he's been working closely with us on 2019 and expanding what we do, and also recently again and expanding again. And we've also brought in regular planning and training. Dillian, who you can see, well, you can't see her too well, she's in one of the middle photos there. She conducts quarterly patrol debriefs and plannings with each of the conservation officers and their teams, so to ensure they're getting regular support. And then once a year, we have an annual training where we bring all of the conservation officers, all of the field stuff into Leigh, which is about an hour, a half an hour flight away, and do a big training exercise and provide an opportunity for collective learning. And a recent thing has also been doing some knowledge sharing with other groups, WCS, PNG, one of them, trying to share experience and build up a collective capacity within PNG for this work. And last slide, what are the things on the horizon for us and for the Ranger program and for SMART? One of the things I mentioned has been the implementation of a new land use monitoring. And this is really born from the fact that our ranger patrol teams were focused very much on the core conservation zone and buffer zone, and we were missing other areas across the landscape that are important to communities, and this was raised by community. So in response to that, we've recruited new land use monitors, we've developed a new data model, and we'll be rolling out that this year. So it'll be really exciting to see how communities use different natural resources, how often, when, where, and this will be really informative for the development of new 5-year land use plans in the next couple of years. Another thing we're looking to do this year will be to integrate SMART survey to collect more systematic ecological monitoring data. And in this bottom map, it's probably a bit small, but it shows you some of these elevational transects that were set up in 2011 that go from outside the core conservation area into the core conservation area, which is in that red, which was set up originally to understand how effective the core conservation area was in terms of, hopefully seeing higher transit species within it than out of it, and that people are still being able to access the resources they require. And so we're looking to integrate SMART and adopt some sort of similar method and design along these parameters. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for all that have persisted and delayed your lunch, but another round of applause for the speakers. Thank you. We'll start up again at 1 o'clock in here. My colleague Ansara will be taking over the moderation for that session, and then at 2 o'clock we'll have a discussion as well. So, thank you.